All right. Okay, folks, so we're very happy that you're joining us, and we'll try to make this very interesting and useful, potentially life-changing for you. As I think you're well aware, what we're going to be doing is delving into the Atlanta market and the Athens, Georgia sub-market, giving you a real feel for why they can be attractive for single-family rental investors, how they've been trending, and we'll give you a feel for how you could use the Roofstock site to analyze properties in those areas, and if you so choose, make offers or acquire them. Okay, now very quickly about myself. My name is Sam Keller. I'm the head of Marketplace Channel Development for the Roofstock Marketplace. I've got over 20 years of experience in commercial, industrial, and residential real estate. Earlier in my career, I spent 7 years at the private sector arm of the World Bank, where I financed hotels, hospitality projects, worked with other real estate developers. I also spent several years as a developer of rooftop solar energy projects, with Recurrent Energy, in conjunction with some of the world's largest operators of industrial real estate portfolios. We eventually sold that to Sharp for over $300 million, and most recently, before joining Roofstock a little over 2 years ago, I worked with a real estate technology company called Waypoint, where we had several hundred billion dollars of assets under management, where we were ingesting all sorts of information to enable the owners to get better insight into their operating expenses. I myself have invested in both single and multifamily real estate in California and elsewhere around the country. Many years ago, I got a Fulbright scholarship and earned a master's in public policy from Harvard.
Okay, and I will jump in and tell you a little bit more about myself here. My name is Matt Thomas. I work with Sam at Roofstock. I am a resident of Georgia. I have lived in both Atlanta and Athens at some point, and I now currently reside in between the two. So when Roofstock says that you are provided with boots on the ground during the buying process, I serve that role for Roofstock on the Georgia market. So I have a license currently in Georgia, Florida, South Carolina, North Carolina, but my focus is in Georgia. I'm a lifelong resident of the state, graduated from the University of Georgia, which is in Athens, the sub-market we'll talk about later. And I joined Roofstock in fall 2018, just recently passed my 1-year anniversary with the company.
Yeah, and folks, I'd honestly say that I'm proud that Roofstock is able to make Matt available to you all. As we go forward, you'll see that he just has extraordinary real estate experience in these markets and is able to share a lot of insight. Okay, now very quickly about Roofstock. We know a lot of you are new to us, so we'll just quickly orient you. The company is about 4 years old, headquartered here in Oakland, California. We have emerged as the most prominent leading marketplace for buying and selling single-family rental properties. That's homes, duplexes, triplexes, and fourplexes. We have already exceeded $1 billion worth of properties transacted through this marketplace, and we're now approaching $2 billion worth of properties. We've got a track record by which the properties transacted through our marketplace have performed better than we underwrote them. So when we estimated the rent and the operating expenses and the home price appreciation, they've actually outperformed in that regard. As you see on the slide in the green column, this past year, the properties have generated a nearly 26% overall return, of which roughly 7% was due to the rental growth, and then there was also the home price appreciation. It's really noteworthy that the properties transacted in the Atlanta market performed even better than this national average. So the overall return for the Atlanta properties has been over 27%. The company was founded by several individuals who were essentially the pioneers in developing the entire single-family rental industry. So after the financial crisis in 2008, it was our CEO, our chairman, who were some of the first movers in terms of developing companies that acquired foreclosed homes at scale, ultimately thousands and thousands of them. They've ultimately leveraged that experience to create Roofstock, and in some ways we're leveling the playing field. So beyond working with big institutions, helping them to acquire homes, we're really enabling everyone to have the same kind of insight into what are the good properties to acquire. Lastly, as you can see in the upper right-hand corner, this Roofstock guarantee. That is where, for the homes bought through our platform, as long as they've got an inspection report that passes our scrutiny, they qualify for this 30-day money-back guarantee. So within 30 days of closing, if you as the buyer are unhappy for any reasons, we buy that property back for what you paid. There's also the guaranteed rent on vacant properties. So if you look on our site at a property that's vacant, again, as long as the inspection report meets our certification standards, there's guaranteed rent. Some basic terms and conditions that you've got to make the home rent ready such that we can market it to rent it out. But provided you do that, if 45 days later it has not yet been rented out, we pay 90% of the rent that was estimated for that property. Okay. Very quickly, we want to make sure you're aware of the full suite of services we provide to folks like yourself. It starts with a whole host of educational resources. So this Roofstock Academy has all kinds of tools, financial modules, all kinds of lectures with a wide range of experts. There's this whole webinar series that's available for you for free online. For purchasing, there's all kinds of client advisory services. So we have folks on staff that can help you to get really clear on your preferences, your goals, the kind of market and property criteria that are best suited for you. Then we've got local market experts like Matt. We've got this Bring Your Own Property program. We'll tell you more about that, but that's where if you identify a property that's not on our site, we can underwrite it for you. We can help you to get a sense of how it would perform as a rental property. For folks that make an offers and get into contract, we've got a whole transaction team that deals with escrow and title and the closing attorneys and the lenders and so forth to get the deals closed. Then we're there with you after closing, working with our property management partners, administering the rent guarantee, and then obviously we can help folks sell through the marketplace also. I wanted to be clear that this is genuinely a mission-driven real estate technology company. Our mission is essentially to make real estate investing radically simple, accessible, and cost-effective. It goes back to what I mentioned about leveling the playing field. As you'll see, we have developed technology that some of the biggest institutional players have, but we're harnessing it to make it available for all of us so that we've all pretty much got an equal chance of acquiring these attractive rental properties. We're gonna, over this webinar, we're gonna give you a demo of how to find attractive properties in Atlanta and Athens. But before doing so, I want to make it clear that you'll essentially see two types of listings on our site. Roofstock exclusive are where we're working with the seller. Those listings are available only on our marketplace. And if you were to submit an offer at the list price, you know that you could take advantage of this buy now feature and the home would essentially be in contract to you. Roofstock select listings are a bit different. That's where we're ingesting data from public sources like the MLS, the multiple listing service, right? Where most homes are listed for sale in this country. We're ingesting hundreds of thousands of those listings every day. We get thousands of them right when they come on the market. Our technology scrutinizes them to get a feel for what they would rent out for, what would be the insurance cost, the property taxes, all of that. in order to curate the ones that are most attractive as rental properties. Again, this is what the big institutional players are doing. But we then have analysts who look at just the best of the best and get those quickly onto our site. So now what we're doing is enabling ourselves and all of you to compete with the big boys, so to speak, at knowing what are the hot properties and to have a good chance at getting them. Here is where we're active. The orange states show where we currently have or recently had inventory. Purple states are where we're about to open up. And now we'll hone in on Atlanta and Athens.
Okay, great. Thank you, Sam, for giving a little background about Roofstock and what the company does and what the mission is. And we will now take a little bit closer dive into Atlanta and Athens specifically. Okay.
Actually, Matt, I made you presenter. What I'll do instead is give you, bear with me a moment.
Okay, yeah,
and I will have you control it with your mouse.
Okay, got it.
Okay.
Just back up. Okay, all right. So yeah, so we'll dive in a little bit more now on specifically on the two markets that I know most of you logged in here to hear a little bit more about. Let's see. Yeah, okay. All right, so we'll start with Atlanta. That's the major market that we are in and publishing listings from in Georgia right now. And that there are a lot of reasons. We'll highlight those here. We'll go over some of the major bullets just from a high level, and then if you have additional questions or want to drill down more specifically, just submit questions or we can schedule calls afterwards. But primarily, the reason that we have chosen Atlanta as a market to be in is because it's the capital of Georgia, but not only that, it's really considered the cultural and economic hub of the Southeast United States. So this is an area where you're 4 hours from a number of other state capitals and major economic areas. So a lot of everything that you hear about the Southeast United States kind of at some point crosses over and through Atlanta, which is part of the reason it's growing at such a rate that it is. But on a high level here, you've got a couple things working in Atlanta's favor, one being overall population growth, which we're seeing substantially. I will give you just some quick numbers. Atlanta, the city of Atlanta has about 500,000 people, but the Atlanta metro area, which is comprised of over 20 counties, has a little over 6 million people. So when you're browsing property, you'll notice that when you click on the Atlanta market or the Georgia market, a large portion of the properties that are under the Atlanta tab are going to have an address or a city other than Atlanta. That's the reason why the overwhelming majority of the Atlanta MSA is not in Atlanta specifically. But there are a couple of things. Job growth in Atlanta. The state of Georgia right now is in a very pro-business mood. Politics, just the general culture is that we're trying to attract business to the state. So we're seeing an exponential job growth rate. There are tax incentives from a state perspective to draw businesses to our state, and it's really working and paying off. And in particular, in areas like Atlanta, where we're seeing this job growth happening. It's really all across the state, but we're seeing it really dialed in Atlanta. Okay. Sam, I'm still not able to get these slides to rotate, so you may have to do that from there.
Okay, bear with us one sec.
I apologize.
No problem. There we go.
Okay, so the big question we're trying to answer, I guess, or that you're interested in knowing is why would you invest in Atlanta? We're going to dive in to that a little bit more in this webinar, but a couple of the main factors are the ones that I would consider the main factors are, first of all, it's an attainable price point. So it's open to a lot more investors, and you see these reality TV shows where, we bought this property for $1 million and sold it for $1.5 million. That's not achievable to everyone. So Atlanta, the price point here, median home price is about $165,000. makes it much more affordable for many more investors to join in on the investment action. The return on investment here is really attractive. We get the question all the time, is this a good investment? That's not something that I or any of the other brokers can answer or should be answering for you, but we can show you the analytics behind it and show you how it compares to other markets. And as you'll see in the following slides, Atlanta is very favorable on most all of the metrics in comparison with other metros. So the rental market in Atlanta, very robust for a number of reasons. In addition to the job growth and population growth, which in turn requires more housing to support that. We've also got a current state where the 18 to 34 age group, they just don't desire to own their home, and they're moving to Atlanta more and more. Actually, a recent survey, of the millennial age group, they listed Atlanta as their number 2 place they would like to live the most in the United States, just behind Houston, Texas. We're seeing an influx there, and just overall sentiment that more people are considering renting versus buying. You'll see the trends here. Overall home values are up, rent growth is up, everything's just green arrow pointing up here, which is all favorable. Yeah, another slide, kind of the same thing. We can bypass this one relatively quickly. We put it in the package for you. You'll have ability to download this later for your files if you would like. Mm-hmm. Okay, so again, just to dive in a little bit more on population growth in Atlanta as compared to the other metros. This is the 4th fastest growing major metro in the United States. We're adding around 75,000. I've seen estimates of up to 100 projected over the next few years, but we're adding residents at a really, really fast rate. You've got a couple other things that, again, we're going to mention job growth here. Another kind of high point here that most of you will be familiar with, the airport in Atlanta is an attraction. If you're traveling in the air on the East Coast, you have likely been in and out of Atlanta Airport. It's the busiest airport in the world, and let's see the region above. Okay, so we can move on through that. Atlanta, the airport is probably a reason that you're familiar with Atlanta in some regard, if you are. Okay, so another one. This one's really important, I think, personally, from an investment standpoint. When I'm looking for a property or considering an area, I want to know what's behind the economic growth. So I've told you all about how the economy is growing. So the next question you should be asking is, why is that? And one of the reasons is because we have a number of, I think close to 20 now, Fortune 500 companies whose headquarters are in Atlanta, which is really exciting. But more exciting than that is it's a very diversified group of companies. So Atlanta is not small town USA that's built up around one company that employs 75% of the residents, where the town goes as the company goes. So if one company goes down, Atlanta's just fine. So as you'll see in this list and on those recognizable logos to your right, you've got everything there from auto manufacturing to insurance, to film and media, to chicken sandwiches, to airlines. So there's no one section of the economy or one sector that's dominant in Atlanta. Mm-hmm. Okay, so again, that's Atlanta from a high level. We'd be happy to answer questions later or schedule times to introduce you to one of our advisors who can really dive in if you have specific questions. But I'd also like to spend a little time today to talk through our newest edition, which is the Athens, Georgia market. Athens is essentially what I would consider a sub-market of Atlanta, although it does stand on its own merits from an economy standpoint. Location, Athens is about 60 miles northeast of downtown Atlanta, but only about 20-30 miles from the edge, depending on which direction you drive, to the edge of the metro area, one of the metro area counties. They're creeping towards Athens. It seems like every time it's expanded. So the Atlanta market is expanding this way. but also the Athens market stands alone on its own merits with its economy, partially because, as you'll see on the first bullet there, the academic presence, which is the University of Georgia. That is the first state chartered university in the nation and currently has over 37,000 students. So that is the major driver behind the rental demand in Athens, Clarke County. And with that university presence, it's a very young, vibrant community. So you see a very popular arts and music scene with popular bands such as REM, Widespread Panic, B-52s, among plenty others that have originated from Athens. Okay, so similar slide to what you saw earlier on Atlanta, and just kind of a larger scale question. Why would one invest in Athens is the question you probably have when you joined this webinar. And the answers are similar, just on a smaller scale, I would suggest. Athens has a lot of the attributes that Atlanta does, and that its rental market is growing. There is solid appreciation, there's high rental demand, good appreciation outlook. A lot of the same factors, just fewer people and fewer houses, but fewer and less competition. So that's a positive. One of the reasons we opened Athens was to make more available inventory for you guys.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, again, strong rental market in Athens. If you ask investors or residents that are familiar with the Athens, Georgia market, the first thing that's going to come to mind when we talk about housing is student housing. Similar to in Atlanta, where every major single family residential player is buying property there, every major student housing developer is in Athens. But in my opinion, they're really missing a key component of the rental demand here, and that there's not any new development or targeted development towards single family non-student housing in this market. And there's really what I consider pent up demand for it, because the university has more than just students. There's professors, faculty, staff, and there's a lot of other types of residents that are interested in or already here that would prefer to rent, that aren't students, and there just isn't a lot of inventory targeting them. So in my opinion, the existing inventory, if it could be bought and positioned as rental, there's pent up demand for that.
Okay.
Yeah, and this slide, just another one we put in the packet to show population trends. It's not as fast growing as Atlanta, a little bit, but it is trending in the right direction. We're just pointing that out here. Again, similar to Atlanta, most of the major indexes, most of the check boxes that you would want to see when considering a market are checked, and have a green arrow pointing up for Athens. And on this page, we put together a similar slide to what you saw on the employers for Atlanta. These are employers that are in or around the Athens area. These aren't Fortune 500 companies like you saw on the Atlanta slide, but just wanted to prove Atlanta is the economic hub for its own sub-market. There are a number of counties surrounding Athens, Clarke County, that are dependent on the jobs in Athens. A lot of people live in neighboring communities and commute to Athens for the jobs that are located there. And you'll see, again, similar, very diverse in nature. And one other point I would really highlight, and we can show it on the map in a second, Sam, but the school system, this is a real driver for a lot of renters, whether in any market, in my opinion, is the school systems, in particular for families that are looking to get their kids in the best schools. People will pay a premium on the rental rates for that, and you'll see that play out as you start considering specific options and see the numbers there. But in Athens, one of the neighboring communities, Oconee County, you'll see on a map, it's actually on the Atlanta side of Athens. in a number of the different rankings, any of the major ranking systems. If you look up Oconee County Public Schools, you're going to see that it ranks in the top 3 public school districts of 180 plus in the state. So there's a pipeline, be it the public schools and the university, there's a pipeline of capable workforce that's being developed here.
Okay.
Okay, another slide we put in just for reference. It would be bypassed, but you'll see it when you download the packet. It's just the rent change. Again, this is just another informational slide to show you the rent increases trending in the right direction over the last 8 years on this particular graph. But you can verify this just knowing the market, knowing the players in the market. You can ask around any property manager, any investor that owns. They can tell you they're raising rents year over year in Athens without much pushback from the tenant base.
Okay. All right. And now I'll give you a better sense of how you can find the properties we have available in Atlanta and Athens on our site. So bear with me just one moment, and I will shift over. Let's see here. Okay. Matt, you're now seeing the Roofstock website, correct?
Yes.
Okay, folks. So when you go to roofstock.com.
Actually, Sam, I see the go-to webinar page right now. I'm sorry. There you go. That's it.
Okay. You're okay. Now you're seeing the Roofstock website. Okay. So when you go to roofstock.com, click on buy, then under location, select Georgia, as I've done. And you'll see that at present, we've got 73 listings in Georgia. And you click on map on the right-hand side to see where they're geographically located. Down below, you can see the thumbnail overviews of each listing. If you were to click on it, it would take you to that. But let's see, here in Athens, you're seeing a few listings. It's worth noting that although we've got 73 listings in Georgia at the moment, the map shows you the listings just for that page. So as you can see here, we've got 3 pages worth of listings, and just click through and the map will show you where each page of listings is located. But let's go ahead and hone in, and we'll hone in on Athens. Then click on the link and you'll see the overview. So here is a property located at 184 Trail Creek. It's got current rent of $2,000 a month. It's listed for $209,000. So pretty much meets the 1% rule. Built in 2006, 4-bedroom, 4-bath. This is a somewhat higher price point than what you tend to see on the site. So many homes can be 100K, 125K, maybe 150. So this is on the upper end, but it's offering nearly a 7.5% cap rate. So that's the net operating income that it's expected to throw off, divided by the purchase price. And with our neighborhood rating system going from 1 to 5, you can see that this is a mid-range neighborhood. Let's go ahead and if we right-click on that, we'll then be able to see more about it. So let me give you an overview of how the listings are structured on our site. There's always the photos, interior and exterior photos. You can see this is a tenant-occupied property, and you're able to see shots of the inside. There's various toggles, so you can see all these different financial parameters, how they would change if you were to buy it at different purchase prices and with different levels of down payment. Scrolling down on the summary tab, you know whether it's vacant, fully leased. In this case, it's got a month-to-month lease. whether there's an HOA, whether it's in a flood risk zone, basic overview of the property. In addition to the proprietary neighborhood score, which takes into account income levels, school scores, employment levels, things like that. You can also then see various stats about the market if you were to click in here. And if you come over to the financials tab, this is where you'll see the ability for you to drill down even further. So you can see how the property would perform if you had different levels of immediate upfront costs. So for some properties, they'll come with an inspection contingency. There'll be an inspection performed at our cost during that period. And in some cases, it shows that some work is needed for a property to be rent ready, as they say. So you can play around with these figures and see how the returns differ. In the analysis tab, depending on the kind of listing, you may see an in-house valuation. So for example, those exclusive listings, which this is not, we would perform a valuation of them, and then there could be a whole series of different kinds of information available. For the exclusive listings, this kind of information tends to be available right up front. And for the select listings, we curate them, we get them up very quickly, so you've got a chance of getting your offer accepted. And then this kind of information is obtained during your contingency period. The by process area is going to give you a sense of who our financing partners are, who could assist you should you choose. Gives the ability to upload your pre-approval letter, which you'll need to have an offer accepted. And if you scroll down, you would see who our property management partners are who could manage the property in that area. Okay, and then if you wish, you could click over into similar listings to see what else we have that's similar to that property. Here in the upper right-hand corner, you can see this Talk to an Advisor link. And ultimately, I would encourage you all, if you have not yet registered for the site, it only takes a couple minutes to do so. So go ahead and register. And then this link, Talk to an Advisor, that enables you to essentially, for free, schedule a call with someone similar to Matt. We've got a highly experienced team of advisors, and they can really add a lot of value in a short amount of time because they can very quickly help you to really clarify your preferences and what's best suited to you in terms of the types of properties. You know, there's a spectrum. Some properties are in riskier neighborhoods but have higher yields. Other properties are in perhaps more stable, safer neighborhoods, but are going to have lower projected returns, but potentially higher appreciation. So these advisors can really help you to hone in on the appropriate investment plan and strategy for yourself. Let's see, one other thing I'd like to show you is that you're not restricted to just those properties that we happen to put on our site. We have this Bring Your Own Property, or BYOP. Well, it sounds like BYOB, but in this case, it's Bring Your Own Property program, where at this domain that you see, you can enter an address, name, your basic contact info, and the address, and we will, if it's in one of our participating markets, we will underwrite that property for you very quickly, some cases as early as, or as quickly as 30 minutes, and send you an exclusive link where only you or whoever has that link can see the listing. So the listing I showed you moments ago is publicly available to the whole world on our site, but for this Bring Your Own Property program, let's say you find a listing on Zillow or some other site, you bring it here, we professionally underwrite it for you, send you the link, and then should you wish, you could submit an offer through our platform. All right, now with that, we can get into questions. So let me shift back over here. Okay. And Now go ahead with the questions tab and enter in your questions, and we'll do our best to answer them. And as they come in, we will, let's see, let me scroll down. Okay. All right, boy, oh boy, here they come. Let's see here, Matt. Interested as to what methodology goes into the neighborhood rankings you see on the site. Let's see, if you go to roofstock.com and scroll down to the bottom, there is a link which explains this. But in a nutshell, I know that it includes data sources of like school scores, medium income, it may include crime, employment levels, education levels, it may have, but other kinds of like census data. And again, at the bottom of our website, you can find a link to more info on that.
Yeah, in my experience, guys, just being local to the area, is the neighborhood scores have been have really been on point with the sentiment around the area. I've not seen those be off very much at all. Just okay. Living here and knowing the neighborhoods.
Okay, let's. I'm still scrolling through the questions here. Does Roofstock provide property management services? We do have an in-house property management firm, but at the moment, those property management services are available for our larger institutional clients. That's another arm of the business. For what we're all talking about, we have vetted, preferred local property management partners. Matt, you're familiar with them. Maybe you can comment on who they are in Atlanta and Athens.
Yeah, for sure. They're on our website too. If you go to the website, there's a partners page that will give you access to all of them specifically and a little more info and even contact information. But in Atlanta, Atlantic Property Management, which has recently changed to GK Houses. I think there was a merger or acquisition there. That's a company that we have used with great success. Excalibur Management is another one. In the Athens market, we've partnered up with a company called Rent Athens. You'll find them online if you want to look it up. They've managed over 1,000 units in the Athens market. It's a full service maintenance, leasing, accounting. All of these companies that we partner with are vetted and full-time, full service professionals. Okay. Same with inspectors and attorneys and any lenders. Any of these third parties that we refer are going to be professionals. We've checked them out.
Okay, Matt, are you seeing this here? It says, this is not a question. Just want to highlight that I have worked with Matt. He is amazing and has been quite helpful in my first transaction.
Yeah, so, that's my wife. She's 2 rooms over. I asked her to do that. Thank you, whoever that was.
Yeah. All right, let's keep going here. All right. There has been a big run up in rent and home prices, so is now a good time to buy? Matt, what's your thought there? I've got a few thoughts I could share.
Yeah, I think it's like any investment strategy. If I would not suggest buying now if you're going to quit buying when the market goes down. But as long as you are buying a cost average approach, buy now, buy when it's down. If you're building a portfolio, now is as good a time as any. There's not really any reason not to start now. The other thing I would offer there is when you're buying, if you are buying a speculative property, I would be less inclined to suggest it. But this is a rental property. Rents don't go down as much during a correction as the prices do. So if you're in it for the long term, now is as good a time as any.
Yeah, exactly. Just to quickly build on that, Matt, one of the reasons why we see so many people buying through us now is that so many of us expect interest rates to go up. So some folks are doing the acquisitions now while they can still make sure they're getting interest rates that can make all the economics work. And then, like you said, as you're evaluating the gross yield and the cap rate, you're to a certain extent locking that in that you can be, if you buy in the right areas, you can be reasonably sure that you're still going to be able to rent it out. You're still going to be able to get that rent, if not more. And then regardless of what's happening with your home price, you're still getting that cash flow.
Yeah. In fact, to take it a step further, in the prior downturn in the 08-09 era, one of the trends I noticed, at least in Athens, where I was at the time, was we had fewer people buying, which created more renters for the people who owned rental properties. So the rental numbers aren't affected as bad as overall pricing.
Yep. All right. Here's a question. How does Roofstock make money? Fair enough. Totally legitimate question. We make money through the transactions, and when you make an offer and it gets accepted on our site, we charge a marketplace fee that's equal to 0.5% of the purchase price, or $500, whichever is greater. I believe that's how it's structured. And keep in mind that we are incurring the cost of those inspection reports. And so for these exclusive listings, we're getting the professional inspection report. We're doing all of this due diligence to get these properties vetted and certified for you. And then for these select listings that we curate off the MLS, you make an offer, there's an inspection and contingency, we pay for that inspection report. So that marketplace fee is going in part to cover those costs. Then at closing, well, we get a commission upon closing.
Typically paid by the seller, Sam. I would highlight that.
Yeah. Okay. If I submit an offer and get into contract, what costs besides the home should I expect to incur? All right. Let's see here. If you're financing the property, expect to pay for an appraisal. And if you're buying a home that's vacant, the inspection report may very well show that there's some initial work, $1,000 or $2,000 or $3,000, or that's going to be needed to get that home to the point where it can be rented out. Likewise, there's typically some degree of cosmetic work that's needed, cleaning the carpet or replacing some of the carpet, painting the walls. If you're making an offer on the vacant properties, expect to incur those costs. And then some degree of closing costs. Matt, anything else come to your mind?
No, I think that covers most, unless you want an additional inspection of any type, like a specific roofing, licensed roofer versus a general inspector, or you want a specific utility examined more closely, or there are a variety of different inspection companies who will gladly take your money if you want to hire them, and that would be at your expense on top of the general inspection.
Okay. There's a question here from Clements. Do you wholesale homes or buy and resell? And what I would say is that you can occasionally find properties listed for our site where it'll indicate that the seller is a Roofstock affiliate, because within Roofstock there is a team that acquires and renovates homes to, in that sense, sort of manufacture, so to speak, good inventory for you all. So occasionally you can find those listings. Matt, is there anything else you would?
If you see property that's listed on the site as Roofstock Select, as Sam pointed out earlier, you've got exclusive and select, the two logos you'll see at the top of the property page. If it's a select listing, that's one that's publicly available, and that's not a wholesale deal. Someone has to sign a listing agreement and warrant that that's their property. So those are not someone flipping paper. That's actually the owner selling the home.
Yeah. Okay. What unique concerns should an investor consider in the Atlanta area? So that really seems one for you, Matt.
I will point out just a general concern about the Atlanta area, and I'll have to think through more. Maybe we can address this one. Email me separately, and I'll think through how it affects the investment angle. But one of the concerns in Atlanta right now is traffic congestion, with so many people and so much growth, and comparatively a really poor public transit system. We're trying to navigate to figure that out long term, and that does have implications on where people live, where subdivisions are developed, and it is a factor on where people want to live and where growth will go. That's really the only thing that pops to mind at first. I don't have any real concerns as far as the rental market and being an investor, other than maybe that challenge we're facing as an entire population.
Okay. All right. Let's get back here. One moment. How are Atlanta, Georgia rental laws and taxes different from South Carolina? Matt, I'm not sure the extent to which you can talk about them relative to South Carolina.
Yeah. So rental laws. Again, same answer as before. That could be an hour-long conversation on its own. So I won't take too deep of a dive. But they're going to vary. Taxes too are going to vary county to county. As far as there are state laws on the landlord-tenant relationship, but the way, little insider info, I suppose, the way the judges within a certain jurisdiction typically lean is something that I could probably give you some guidance on case by case. But overall, I would say it's a fair balance between landlord-tenant. In Athens, maybe a little more tenant-friendly just because of students. But that's
just 1 second. Someone says we can't hear, so I just want to make sure that we haven't done anything here.
I can still hear you, Sam, if that matters.
I can hear you too. I want to make sure that hundreds of other folks that are dialed in here can hear.
I don't think that was really the point of the webinar, for us to talk to each other.
Yeah. Would one of you mind in the question area, it's letting us know if you can hear. Someone says it's freezing. That's from Marcos. I'm sorry to hear that. It's relatively warm here in Oakland, California, but can you hear us? Everything looks fine in terms of our settings here. It says people can hear you. All right, let's go on, assuming that folks can hear us.
Okay. What else do we have on the questions there, Sam?
Let's see. Yeah, it says if the median price is 165K, what is the median rental rate for single family homes?
So the interesting thing with Atlanta is you're going to see statistics that are all over the board, because if you look up Atlanta median or Atlanta average or any Atlanta specific, you're going to get some results that are actually specific to the city of Atlanta and some that cover the entire metro area. So that's going to be, depending on your source, you may get a different answer. Just as an example, for a $165,000 home in Atlanta, I would anticipate $1,200 to $1,300, $1,400 a month rent, if that helps at all. But that's not statistically backed, but just based on what I know the returns are, I think that would be a safe estimate.
Okay. Matt, what do you think about this question? How is the market of McDonough, Georgia? Did I pronounce that right?
McDonough, yes, that's right. I really like McDonough. I have some friends in McDonough. It's generally, if you don't have a map in front of you, McDonough is going to be southeast of the city. It's right off I-75 or Interstate 75. It's a nice suburban area. There are some good schools in the area. Got a really suburban feel, even rural feel in parts of McDonough, to not be any further away from from Atlanta than you are. I would look closely if you're thinking of that area. There's a small community called Ola, O-L-A, that's right next to McDonough, where there are some terrific schools and a strong rental demand. So take a look at that specific pocket if you're considering that area.
Okay. Matt, how would you compare rental investment prospects in a market such as Athens versus a more established market in the, I'm not seeing the rest of the question, versus a more established market in the, I can't see the rest of the question.
It's maybe a comparison to Atlanta.
Yeah, why don't you interpret it as such?
Yeah, we'll take a stab. The two, if you compare if you look at stats, if you look at the growth rates, rent growth rates, population growth, you're going to see them all trending positively right now. Athens is just a much smaller market, so you want to be aware of that going in. You're going to want to have. Athens is not a market that I would suggest going into blindly, but that's the same as any other small market. So having myself on the ground actually will really be a benefit there, and the advisors who can guide you in advance, they're familiar as well. We're made familiar before we open the market. It's just much smaller. Your return should be similar. It's just far less people.
Okay. Do you have to show proof of funds upon a PSA, purchase and sale agreement, or can you do so after an accepted offer? You do not have to show proof of funds in order to submit an offer, though we may be moving in that direction, because frankly, for an offer to really be considered, you got to see the proof of funds if it's an all cash offer, or a valid pre-approval letter. But at the moment, it's not required to submit the offer. But for these Roofstock select listings where we're ultimately going to be submitting the offer to a listing agent, we need the proof of funds or the pre-approval letter for it to be well received, and for us to maintain our reputation, for Matt to maintain his as a broker in the market. Matt, anything else to say in terms of when the proof of funds or pre-approval letter, for that matter, is needed?
Yeah. So I think in summary on that question, I would say legally speaking, no, you don't have to. Practically speaking, yes, you probably do to be successful. It's as competitive as the environment is now. If we don't document your ability, whether it's cash or pre-approval on a loan, the likelihood of you getting an acceptance is really low.
Yeah. Okay. Do you need to hire a property manager in order to purchase a property? You want to tackle that one, Matt?
Sure. No, you don't need to or have to. Let me back up. You don't have to. If you're buying from afar, the need to is really a personal decision, I think. But there's a lot that goes on in management of property. I owned a company, had 5,000 bedrooms under management, and after doing that, I really don't know how you would do it without having someone local to be able to see the property. That's really important. So you don't have to. You do have to go with one of our vetted partners to get the Roofstock guarantees. So those are not applicable if you choose to self-manage or hire a management company that's not one of the companies we recommend.
Yeah. There's a question here, which I think is an excellent one. It says, how can I guarantee that the rent mentioned is the actual rent I can get? Based on Craigslist, it's not. Please advise. First off, be aware that although we've got extraordinary technology, with machine learning and artificial intelligence that takes into account a whole host of third-party data sources, and we've got a professional underwriting team, that in and of itself is no guarantee that the rent we estimate for vacant properties is going to absolutely be spot on in every case in terms of when the property is marketed, what it will actually rent out for. So I think you'd be very wise. It's very prudent when you're looking at listings on our site to do a bit of diligence on your own. And I know that some very savvy investors who use our site, they'll go to Rent-A-Meter. Rent-A-Meter is a tool where you can get rental comps. Some folks will, of course, check Zillow and the Zestimate. Matt, other thoughts that you may have in terms of how someone can gauge the extent to which our rental estimate for a vacant listing is on
Yeah,
target?
yeah, it's a lot more difficult than doing a market analysis on the value of a home. There's just way more data available for sales prices, and everything goes through a central data service like MLS. So it's all there at our disposal. Rent's not the same way. Property managers often don't even use MLS or any service where they keep all their data together. So it's not as easy to estimate. But ultimately, the market rent is what someone's willing to pay to rent property. And I think our analysis gets really close most of the time. And we will confirm with the local PM before you sit down at a closing table.
Yeah, okay. All right, well, we've still got a lot of people with us, so, and there's still more questions. So Matt, if you're amenable, let's keep going here.
Good.
Okay, are the fees the same for BYOP for buyers as in a normal transaction? And the answer is yes. There are no difference in the fees. Okay. Does Winterville count as a suburb of Athens, and is it a good investment area?
I would say yes, and yes qualified maybe. Yes, it is a suburb of, so Athens, Clark County is a unified government, Athens being the city, Clark being the county. Winterville is in Clark County. It's just east of Athens and is more rural in nature, I think, compared with the rest of the city of Athens. But it is very attractive to renters. It's a neat little community. It sort of stands alone, separate of Athens, but it's very convenient. It's a 5 to 10 mile drive from the heart of downtown. So I would have no hesitation recommending Winterville for a rental property.
Okay. Is Athens more pro-tenant or more pro-landlord? And how does it compare in that regard to Atlanta?
If we're speaking of the legal system, there's a very specific set of tenant landlord laws that Georgia follows. I can provide anyone a copy of that if needed. And Clark County, you know, as the judges have to follow by those rules. I think sometimes the sentiment is in student housing. My experience has been the judges are a little more pro-tenant because they feel sorry for them sometimes. But I think if we're in the room with another, with a family or another adult, if we had an issue, I think they're just gonna follow the book of law there.
Got it. Okay. And there's a question about rent control.
Not an issue here.
All right. There are lots of suburbs in Atlanta. How should we think about everything else outside of except Athens?
Yeah, and I guess just to be completely clear, Athens is separate and not considered part of the Atlanta MSA. So it's a separate market on its own. There are 20, I want to say 28, 29 counties that are considered part of the Atlanta MSA now. So, you know, there are different ways to look at it. And it really just depends on your investing style. North of the city is going to be your more expensive housing, but it's also going to be the more crime, higher school scores. South, you can find a home south of Atlanta that's inside the perimeter of I-285, if you look on a map, that's 5 to 10 miles from downtown and in good condition for $150,000. So it's going to come with its warts as well, but that's available to you. So it really just depends on your style. If you're seeking family-oriented, good school system, super safe, stable, That's available. If you want to go on upside and high appreciation and are willing to take a little bit of risk, that's available. So the advisors can guide you and point you in the right direction there.
Yeah, and I would add that we're going to email everyone this presentation and where you can find this recording. And in addition, we're going to send you some materials that will basically include a map of Atlanta and a map of the Athens area. And it essentially will be a heat map showing you the neighborhood scores. So that depending on whether you want sort of the nicer neighborhoods with potentially lower yields or the somewhat riskier neighborhoods with the potentially higher yields, you can use those to help hone in on areas that are suitable for your investment strategy. All right. Let's see. What's the best way to search for multifamily properties on the site? It doesn't seem intuitive. Yeah, we've got engineers that are continually find ways to improve all this, and that's one of them. I think there is now a multifamily filter on the site. Let me just go there quickly to confirm. Okay, let's see. Matt, are you seeing my screen here?
I can, yes.
Okay, got it. So there is a filter for 2 to 4 units. And when it comes to multifamily, that's what we currently do. We deal with duplexes, triplexes, and fourplexes, and you can filter for them with the button that I'm showing you there. Okay. What is the eviction process like in these two markets?
I would want you to speak to one of the property managers to make sure I'm current. I sold the property management company I owned 2 years ago, and I can tell you what it was like at that time, but make sure you check to get an update. You have to give demand for payment or notice of whatever default the tenant is in. Give them written demand. I would suggest certified so that you can prove that they received it. And then there's a waiting period before you file. Once you file the dispossessory with the court system, the tenant has the right to respond to that within 7 days. If they do not respond, you will be granted an eviction date in which to take back your property. If they do respond, you'll be put on a court docket to appear before a judge who will ultimately decide the outcome. Typically, in my experience, getting your property back, taking back possession is far more easier than collecting what you consider past owed funds. Documenting that someone is in default on the lease agreement is not difficult. Documenting that they owe you money sometimes can be a little more tricky, but it can be done. That's why we would suggest the professional property managers who do that every day.
Okay. Let's see here. Does Roofstock provide lending services? No, we do not. Though on the site, in conjunction with each listing, you'll see some external third-party financing partners that specialize in lending for rental properties that can be available for you. And some of them, like Better Mortgage, provide a very easy, quick way to get pre-approved, so you can have that pre-approval letter. All right.
Okay, and I'll add one more quick thing to that, Sam, only because it came up recently. If there is something on our site that the mortgage companies that we have listed don't have a product for, while they're not posted on our site as vetted partners, I do have local bank contacts. For instance, there's a package of duplexes that must all be sold together on there right now in Athens that looks like a really good deal, but you're not going to get a conventional mortgage product for something like that. So if you need a local sticks and bricks local bank to look at something, I can put you in touch with someone on something like that.
Okay. Are these properties at market rate for pricing or usually below market averages? I'll share a few thoughts and then you feel free to chime in, Matt. For the Roofstock Select listings on our site, again, we are not representing the seller or having any relationship with the seller. That's set by the seller and their listing agent. So we're showing you the list price on our site. Now, in terms of the price points, we're curating properties. We're finding properties that have the types of price points that we know our buyers tend to want, and that tend to allow the kind of economics that can make all this work. So on the lower end, you may find the cheapest properties available on our site to be maybe like $50,000. By and large, they're $100,000, $125,000, $150,000 homes, and then it could get up to above $200K. When it comes to triplexes and fourplexes, you'll see some listings on the site in the 400s or 500s. Okay, all right, here. Is there any work that needs to be done to fix up the property post-purchase? If there is, does the property management company handle it? And yes, that's the deal. If there's work that needs to be done post-close, the property management companies are there for that purpose. Matt, anything to add to that?
Yeah, that's what they do. They have vetted vendors themselves, contractors that can do anything from a small touch-up paint job to a major renovation. So all of these guys we're going to put you in touch with will have those contacts. As far as your first question, do they need work? That's going to vary listing to listing. Some may be very near turnkey. Others will need some work. And so that's something we have the contacts to put you in touch with to take care of that.
Okay. Are all property management companies third parties? And yeah, yes, they are. Yes, and they've all gone through a screening and due diligence process to be listed on the site. You can imagine from our perspective, we've got folks like you coming to us, making offers, transacting through our site, and it's key for us that you've got a good experience post-close for this whole system to work. So we've got a very vested interest in having property management partners that are going to provide good service to you. Okay, let's see. Why are duplexes and larger not included in your 30-day guarantee? It's a good question. There's been a lot of internal discussion and even debate about that, but I've only got my perceptions as to why that's the case. I'm not absolutely certain, but as we get into duplex, triplexes, and fourplexes, the sticker price gets even higher, and if we have to buy those back, that's an even bigger liability for us. We're already, putting ourselves out there with the guarantee as it currently stands for houses, and we just haven't had the appetite to expose our balance sheet for those higher price point duplexes, triplexes, and fourplexes. And then when it comes to the rent guarantee, it's one thing to ascertain the extent to which we believe a home can be rented out, but then if it's a matter of can both or all three or all four units within a duplexes, triplexes, and fourplexes also be quickly rented out, that just we just don't at the present have the appetite to extend the guarantee for that. Okay, why don't we take one or two more, Matt, and then wrap up. And for you folks whose questions don't get answered, I would encourage you to schedule that call with the advisor, and they can hone right in on your particular things. Is it possible to do a walkthrough on vacant properties? I'll share some thoughts on that. And the bottom line is that it is, and we see the need for it. For particularly properties that are owner occupied during the transaction process, which is the case, for so many homes that are for sale on the MLS, where somebody's selling their home and they plan to vacate by the time it closes. For those in particular, it can be needed to do a walkthrough just to make sure that the property has been properly vacated and that they've taken their personal belongings and that they haven't left trash or debris. But Matt, as the boots on the ground, so to speak, any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm not sure if the question was about if you personally, if the buyer personally can tour the home. Under the current arrangement, that's not something we typically do as far as showing homes to buyers, since most of our clientele is out of state and buying strictly for the purpose of an investment. But I will tell you, technology is such that you can basically tour the property without ever being here anyway. You can walk down the street, see all around on Google Maps. You're going to get an inspection report that's 100 pages full of everything that's wrong with the property. You're going to see the realtor photos that highlight the best, and then you're going to get an inspection report that highlights the worst. So you're going to be very familiar with the asset before you're ever asked to go to closing.
Okay. I'm interested in investing in a multiplex property in either area. Would I be able to find that on the site? I think we've covered that. There's the filter for 2 to 4 units at the top of our homepage once you go to the buy area. And
yeah, and to that question, Sam, I would say that may be a good candidate for the BYOP. There may be, the more units you have, the more reasons that we may have disqualified it from not making it to the site. So I would say keep a lookout for those on some of the larger sites, the Zillows, or if you have access to MLS, and submit those. We may be able to get one through the BYOP program. Even if we can't certify it, you can still buy it. You just don't get the guarantee. So feel free to submit anything you find elsewhere.
yeah, okay. Let's see, there's no way we're going to get through all these. Do you have lending partners that lend to LLCs? I believe they do. Do you have any other view on that, Matt?
Yeah, it's yes, is the short answer. We do. I think we can keep that one short. It's a little more tricky, but yes, we can coordinate that.
Okay. Let's see. This is probably the longest webinar we've done here. My gosh. I'm impressed by the quantity and quality of these questions. Oh, you know what? This is a good one. Due to the market being fairly competitive, what should you offer with regards to the asking price?
Right now, the list, the sold to list ratio in both of these markets is north of 98%. For the listings that we are publishing on our site, it is north of that. What's happening is we are taking all these steps to underwrite the property for you before it goes to the site. So you need to go into this understanding that you've already won the negotiation by seeing it on our site, because we've already done all the underwriting to prove that it's a good deal, and your investment returns are already there. So if you're satisfied with the investment returns that you see published, go for it and assume it's a win. The ones that the buyers that I see come in that offer 97% of list price because they want to feel like they got a 3% discount, end up losing almost every time. And I've seen people pay 50% of the asking price and get a terrible deal, and I've seen people pay 120% and get a great deal. So when you come into the offer process, be less focused on the value compared to what the seller is asking and more on what the asset is worth.
Yeah, well said. Well said. Well, it seems that we could be answering questions all evening, but Matt, I'm sensitive to the fact that for you there in Georgia, it's going on 8:30. You're missing the bedtime routine with your kids.
I actually have a trip to Nashville ahead of me this evening, so I'm about to hit the road.
Oh, okay. Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. Well,
I've enjoyed it, and I look forward to hopefully talking to some of our viewers soon.
yeah. Thank you all for your time and attention and these really insightful questions and comments. I've enjoyed it. I've enjoyed doing this with you, Matt. Our colleagues will be emailing you this presentation, a link to the recording, and as I mentioned, the heat maps of both markets showing the neighborhood scores. And again, we've got plenty of other colleagues that can work with you one-on-one to answer your questions and hone in on what'll work best for you. So thank you all, and have a good evening.